You are listening to the Special Needs Children podcast with Chitra Iyer. Chitra Iyer is a parent of 23-year-old Shravan Iyer who has epilepsy, cerebral palsy and autism. She is the CEO of MFA and has been helping families with life-centered planning to reach their personal financial goals. She is also a trustee of a parent support group, the Forum for Autism, which was set up almost 2 decades ago. MFA is a 17-year-old organization working in the personal finance space. They have set up a dedicated practice to help families with special needs children to plan their financial goals and invest for them. The thoughts shared here are as a result of discussions with parents, caregivers, siblings, and professionals regarding the planning of a person with special needs. They have set up a dedicated practice to help families with special needs children to plan their financial goals and invest for the same. The thoughts shared here are as a result of discussions with parents, caregivers, siblings, and professionals regarding the planning of a person with special needs. In this expert series podcast, Chitra is talking to Ms. Ritika Sahni, who runs her NGO Trinayani and is one of the most vocal disability campaigners in Mumbai.
Hello everyone. Warm welcome to my Special Needs Children podcast. Today I have with me a very charming personality, Ms. Ritika Sahni, one of the most vocal disability campaigners in Mumbai. Warm welcome to you, Ritika. How are you?
Thank you, Chitra. So happy to be doing this with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking out your time and agreeing to do this interview with me. I've been fortunate to have known you for over a decade now, Ritika. I've witnessed and also participated in your superb, very well coordinated activities of Trinayani. Just to introduce you formally to our listeners, Ritika has been part of the disability sector for the last 30 years, having been a communication therapist, a special educator, heading the speech and language department at ADAPT, Mumbai, among other roles. She founded Trinayani in 2006. She will share in detail about what all Trinayani does today and all its brilliant initiatives that she has spearheaded as part of the NGO. The entire mission is to include, honor, and empower persons with disabilities by advocating their rights and creating awareness about disabilities. At Trinayani, she regularly designs and curates sensitization campaigns for diverse stakeholders. As a disability campaigner, she runs a spa employing blind massage therapists, curates inclusive events, and creates awareness films, hosts a radio show, and very recently has co-created the first of its kind 6-in-1 game kit on disability awareness titled Towards Inclusion. That's so much that you're doing, Ritika. I want to dive straight into our session. You okay with it?
Absolutely.
So, Ritika, how did you become such a big advocate for people with disabilities? What's your story? Can you please share with us?
Sure. Chitra, I was raised in Kolkata and lived there till I shifted to Mumbai. And while in Kolkata, I'm a Punjabi. I come from a very, very traditionally, or let's say my family was nice and traditionally strict and disciplined. So much so that, getting to get into higher education was also a struggle where one had to convince them that I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I think it's just a simple trait. I do not have any personal reason for doing what I do, other than the fact that I think communicating and helping bring about change or creating an impact or seeing people's minds and hearts change is one big selfish reason, but no personal reason. When I finished my higher secondary, that is class 12 in Kolkata, I started volunteering for a school there working for children with autism. Now, you could always have a question that why did I think of doing it for children with autism. I wanted to volunteer, so it didn't really matter what the cause was. I just wanted to spend my time doing something which I thought would be empowering for my own self. It's only when I reached the school that I realized that it was a school for children with disabilities, and I was, literally thrown into a class where, as a teacher's aide, helping the teacher work around with about a couple of students there. Now I know they were all students on the autistic spectrum. It was an interesting couple of weeks for me to be able to understand how children were reacting, working, how parents were being taken care of and their needs, and how they were, in their entire process, the role of the parent and the teacher. So I just did what I was asked to do at that point of time. And I remember, and I must say this to you, share this with you, Chitra, since you're so deep into this. I always used to wonder that, I used to sing, as a singer, I used to sing and I used to get everybody involved, but I would rarely get the response that I wanted to from all the children there on autism. And I would tell the teacher that, aisa kyun hai mujhe, how come, am I doing something wrong? Should I do it differently? And I must share this story with you. And then, class 11, I finished my summer vacation. I went back to doing my graduation. And then suddenly I received a call from the school saying that, can you come back once to visit us? And I just wondered. And apparently it seemed, one particular child had started turning his back to the class and just sitting in a corner facing the wall and singing the song that I would teach. And they said,
how sweet. Wow.
I'm telling you, and I thought, and here I was thinking that, I was not creating no impact on anybody. Nobody was listening to me. Nobody was responding. And I went back there and they said that, do you think you would, you can kind of chat with this child? And I did that. And his eyes sparkled. There was this, I will never be able to forget that face in my life. And it was so interesting to have that reaction. And I went back, of course, went back to doing my graduation. And again, after graduation, I got the opportunity to volunteer. So I very naturally went back to the same school. And you would know the school, it was Manovikas Kendra. Now, of course, a premier organization in the country. And by the time I went back to volunteer, they had shifted. They had shifted there and they'd become a much larger organization. And this is the turning point. So I went back again, and wherever they wanted me to help, I started helping. But on my way to that organization and back from the organization to my home, on the way, I am literally a couple of buildings away, I started noticing a group of young adults, talking to each other, moving their hands. Now I know that they were using sign language, a lot of gestures and smiling and laughing. And I would notice that, and I was all right. A couple of days later, again, I saw them, this time talking to each other, by signing. And then they would turn to another lady who I realized, and I know she's a teacher because later I started teaching in the same school, and they would speak to her. And I was completely fascinated. So I've always been fascinated by this whole, the whole process of communication, of reaching out, of how do you connect with people. I then walked into that school, and that was the oral school for deaf children. I walked into the school and I said I wanted to learn that language. I wanted to learn how to communicate with my hands. And as a true leader, I think the lady, I remember it was Rita Joshi, who was the principal there. She immediately told me, she says, would you like to do your B.Ed in deaf education? And Chitra, I think what you need to understand about me is that most of the decisions in my life are decisions that have fell in my lap and I have just accepted it without really getting into a lot of questioning. So not a lot of planning. As soon as she said, would you like to do your B.Ed in deaf education? I immediately said yes. And at that point of time, and I'm talking about 90, Ali Awards Young National, and at that point of time, it was a different name. Now the Ali Awards Young Institute for Hearing Disabilities. You had to come to Bombay to do your B.Ed because the regional centers had yet not opened. So I was nominated by the Oral School for Deaf Children to come to Bombay to do my B.Ed in deaf education. And that's how the journey actually started. Went back to Kolkata after my B.Ed, joined the Oral School for Deaf Children only thrice a day. And that gets you to how I've always been interested in not only doing the same thing again and again. I like variety. I like to do different things at any given point of time. So joined them for 3 days. Interestingly, I used to teach singing, music to young deaf children. I used to teach economics to the same children I saw outside talking, which triggered me to get into the field. And I started a small session, a small program for children coming from the nearby slums in Hindi, since I'm well versed with Hindi. And twice a week, I joined the Indian Institute of Cerebral Palsy, which is again a premier organization in the country. And at that point of time, Dr. Sudha Kawal was heading it, and it was such a pleasure to be working under her. And I started teaching children who were deaf but had multiple disabilities. And while I did this in the morning, every day in the evening from 5 to 7, I ran my own clinic where I was an inclusive support teacher, teaching children who were deaf but going to regular schools. So I think what I do now with Trinayani, it's all it's all building up with what I started. My belief in inclusion, my belief in communication, which is what we did at the IICP, where children, profoundly disabled children with deafness, non-verbal children, were all given augmentative and alternative strategies to be able to communicate, because communication needs are very, very important for everybody, irrespective of no matter what disability you have. So I think that's how the journey started. I went on to doing my master's in music after my B.Ed in deaf education, because really, Chitra, if you really want to know what I really wanted to do, I wanted to do further studies in how to teach music to deaf children. That's something I really wanted to do. And that's why I did my master's in music from Rabindra Bharati University. As luck would have it, I met a very interesting music director, composer in Kolkata, who asked me to assist him. And I began to assist him. And that's how my journey as a professional singer also started. But not many people are aware of the fact that, my journey, both in music and in the disability sector, I have been pursuing it absolutely simultaneously and feel very blessed to be able to follow both my passions.
That's lovely. Really lovely, Ritika. I've heard you sing, I've heard you perform, I've heard you encourage. It's really been wonderful seeing how you have adapted and tried to make maximum use of your talent and enrich everyone's lives, all of those around you. Where do you think, what are the big areas that you would see need actual change, for people with disabilities in India today?
So Chitra, I as you are aware, I shifted to Mumbai because I was signed on by Sony Music as the debut artist in the country. But
yes, that was a big one, very big one. Yeah.
I know, but after shifting there, that's where I joined ADAPT, which was earlier the Spastic Society of India. I think while I was working with them, my album released, I also got the opportunity of doing a lot of performances in India and across the country. And the one thing that I noticed in all my performances was the absence of persons with disabilities. And I would always wonder, how come I never see any disabled people in any public show, in any private show. However, because I was so passionate about, understanding or working with people with disabilities and the disability sector, in every show, I would always say that, this is also what I do. And you will not believe and I'm talking about every show, after the show ended, I would have people coming backstage and telling me that, yes, my aunt, or yes, my daughter, or my brother. And I would tell them, I said, how come this is a family get together? Why haven't you got them? And I'm talking about corporates. I'm talking about people doing very well for themselves who would not have their friends and family members with disabilities in that particular family get together. And that's when I realized that I think as, special educators, parents, counselors, psychologists, all the stakeholders who are working in the disability sector, our entire aim is to have our children and our adults live regular lives, go about living lives the way anybody does. But for that to happen, it was important that the 90% of the population of the country who are the non-disabled population, who make all the decisions that affect this approximately 10% of the population, if they don't become your ally, if they don't understand what it means to live with a disability, then most of their decision makings, unknowingly, they were not discriminating intentionally, but unknowingly, they were excluding. And that's where I started and I decided to create Trinayani in 2006. And to answer your question, Chitra, public attitudes towards disability is actually influenced by two very important factors. One is their knowledge about disability, and the second is their interaction with people with disabilities. And if these two are not taken care of, then you will always have that gap. And Trinayani actually focuses on these two major areas. One is sensitization and one is empowerment. If you want people, non-disabled people, to be able to reach out and connect, then you need to give them opportunities of meeting people with disabilities. Because most of the non-disabled population spends their entire lives never going to school or working or playing or even at times seeing someone with a disability, which is a fact. And how they're almost invisible to the entire population. So I think what's very important, what needs to be done is to be able to create opportunities, to be able to create spaces to intentionally to get the community of the non-disabled community and people with disabilities together. And this is something that I urge organizations, NGOs in this country to do that. You cannot work in isolation. You can't hope that people without disabilities will give admission to your child, will give jobs to your child when they know nothing about disability. It's not fair to blame them for not being disabled or not knowing. So how do you go about it? Then you go about creating opportunities wherein, whether it is an opportunity by creating a radio show on disability that thousands will watch, or films, short films, where if I don't ever meet someone with a disability, I will show you a film to show you that, hey, that perception that you have, that misinformation that you have about the bias that you have, the stereotype that you have, typical in your mind, because you've been watching a lot of films who don't portray disability well. Allow me to change that by showing you this one particular clip of someone with a disability, profoundly disabled, looking very, very disabled, but working on a very high position. Because most of us, Chitra, whether we like it or not, we like to put people in boxes. And I'm talking about all of us. We do it. All of us do it. You do it. I do it. We put people in boxes. We start defining them according to how they walk or how they wear, what kind of sari has she worn, what is her hairstyle. We do it all the time. Stereotypes, we are all stereotyped. And the problem that happens with people with disabilities is that when you have stereotypes about people with disabilities, it actually affects their progress in life. So therefore, non-disabled people need to be given opportunities to be able to challenge their own biases and stereotypes that they have about people with disabilities. I can tell you how Trinayani goes about doing it, but my entire plea is to our own sector that at any given point of time, while you are working in empowering your child and adult with disability, you should also work in empowering the non-disabled population who's actually going to create that opportunity for your child. You work so hard, but you can only do so much. The opportunity has to be created by somebody else. And that somebody else needs to be empowered with appropriate information and relevant information about disability, and needs to be exposed to relevant portrayal of people with disability.
Actually, you actually went into a part of answering my next question, which was to ask you that what would you tell the community at large on how they should interact with people with disabilities, in the public space.
No, I haven't answered that. I haven't answered
you just
that.
began, you just began by a bit of
I have a proper
about,
answer to that. But Chitra, I want you to ask me something which I've been working on. That one is that, I think we're always very worried about the attitudes of people without disabilities. But I think we also need to worry about the attitudes that people with disabilities have. They have to change their attitude also. It's not just all right for, the non-disabled people to become more empathetic or compassionate. It's also people with disabilities who have, begun to apply that ableist lens, and given up on about their disability, or not doing enough to self-advocacy. Even parents who are at times overprotective, or at times underutilizing the potentials of their child with disability, or parents who feel that they're alone, because they're really not alone. There are lots of many people that they can reach out to. The dynamics, within families, when you suddenly have a child with disability, all these things also come to play. So even the entire sector, even people who are disabled themselves and are product of the ableist lens, they have their own biases, and they also have to look at their own biases, and they need to understand that their attitudes towards their own disability is also very important, which will shape social interaction. So I don't know, I just thought that this is something that since you know my work
very, very important that you said this, and I completely agree with it, because yes, that mindset and that bias does seep in for sure. And moving on to this, the latter part.
Use some tips.
Yeah, and also, what I really loved about what you started with is you volunteering, right?
Yeah.
How many people would have ever done that in their lives?
As I said, Chitra, for me, I have just flowed with the tide. Whatever life has thrown at me, I have simply accepted it with a lot of integrity, done my best, to the best of my abilities, try to do justice to it, and then left it and not gone into anything else. So volunteering, maybe because I volunteer, Chitra, I am also very big on volunteers. You're aware that I almost single-handedly run my organization. When I say that, I would like to acknowledge the volunteers who come on board. And when they come on board with me, I'm always trying to tell them that, even volunteering is serious business. It has to be done professionally. You have to commit to your time. You have to commit to accountability. You have to, whatever, aaj humne kiya, kal nahi kiya, ma'am, I cannot do it tomorrow. With me, it does not work. So I have been very, very fortunate to get volunteers who have been open to receiving my learnings about volunteering, and saying that, you want to give your time, you should, by the end of 3 weeks, 1 day, whatever, 10 minutes of volunteering, you should be able to say that I created an impact, that I contributed. So for me, volunteering is also a very, very important aspect of of gratitude, that's how you show your gratitude, by volunteering. You show gratitude
Absolutely.
for your own privileges.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah. So coming to the tips, would you like to share?
Yes, I think the one thing, since I work so closely with the non-disabled population, because that's the route we took. The idea, as you rightfully said in the beginning, is to honor, include, and empower persons with disabilities. And that's our core objective, to make difference in the lives of people with disabilities. But the process actually involves grabbing the attention and soliciting a change within the minds of the non-disabled persons, which are the 90%. So what would be my tip to those people, to our friends without disabilities? Number one, I think, is do not be awkward around people. Let's not say around people with disabilities. I think you should just not be awkward. Whenever we see something, we look at a person, walk, talk, hear, think, eat differently. We immediately start presuming incompetence, that perhaps he or she or they will not do things the way it should be done. And I think that's wrong. As I said earlier, we all have stereotypes and we are all subjected to stereotypes, but do not get hung up on stereotypes. At any given point of time, I think we should always go beyond the diagnosis, go beyond the disability that we see, and give that benefit of doubt that that person may be somebody with immense intelligence, or may have some incredible abilities that will be different from you. Most importantly, something I tell everybody, that words matter. Language is very important. Our mothers used to say, shub shub bolo. And now I realize how important that is. You must be very careful about the language and the words that you use when you're talking to, or when you're talking about people with disabilities, because words can, help you with your self-esteem, and words, on the other hand, can also get you down and be very damaging. So the idea is to use empowering and transformational and respectful language. Always, as I say, look at the person. Just because someone has a disability does not mean that the person is sick. That's a very common thing that people think. So, myths and misconceptions that we all have, put them aside and take a step forward and get your own answers. Speak to the person with disability. There are two, Chitra, there are two things that can happen. I tell them, because one person, while I was talking like this with students, one, and this is something I must share. One student came up to me and said, ma'am, when I was a little younger, I went with my father to a hospital, and there was this gentleman coming down, and he was having his crutches, and we saw that he had a lot of difficulty. So we immediately went up to help, and he got very angry. And I said, that's what gets me two things. So there are two things which will happen when you speak to someone with a disability, and two things that happens to anybody. Anybody you want to say you want to help, they can say, oh, yes, please, will you help me? In that case, if a person with a disability says, will you help me? The next thing you should ask is, how do I help? So that you do it correctly. But the second reaction could be what that man did. He might say, no. Of course, I can take care of myself. I don't want you to help me. In that case, you can simply say, oh, that's fun. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. And just go about. You don't have to feel bad that I offered him help and he didn't give help, because that's, again, you are making yourself and your offering take on a much bigger role. So I think these are very tiny things, to acknowledge the fact that we are all different. We all have our differences. We all have our abilities and inabilities. And the list of cannot do for each one of us is much longer than what we can do. And we need to remember that.
So it's really, really very, very nice, Ritika, the way you shared about this. Especially from talking about don't be awkward. I have faced that so many times, so I totally understand where you're going. Ritika, if I were to ask you, what are the top three things on your agenda that you're currently working on? What would you say?
Chitra, as you mentioned, we just launched the Towards Inclusion Disability Awareness Card Game Kit. Our belief in equality and equity really finds us exploring various creative mediums to sow the seed of inclusion and assimilation and acceptance and understanding. And this Towards Inclusion 6-in-1 card game kit took us about 4 years. It's the first of its kind anywhere in the world, I think. And the idea is to be able to now talk about it. We launched it in 2020, and then, of course, pandemic happened. So 2 years of course, I must say, 2 years of incredible learning, because we started doing things that I otherwise would have never done. So the pandemic, in a way, was an extremely learning 2 years for us. Currently, we are trying to promote the game kit through a Towards Inclusion Disability Awareness workshop for especially for teachers in the academic community. I have a lot of corporate sector, a lot of organizations who are opting for it. And I must tell you, we just went international 10 days back, where we did the same workshop for Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind, an energy company in New York. So that was a very interesting thing that happened.
Wow, that is congratulations.
I know, it was good, because it was good that they seemed to have, and I asked them, I said, how did you get to know? They said, we just typed disability awareness and we got your website. So I said, that's good. That's one. Number two is I am working on designing a disability awareness year-long program for schools. And we will be doing a pilot in one school in Pune. And then depending upon how it shapes up, if you can have cinema in school and art in school and sports in school, why can't you have disability awareness in schools? So I'm very keen on, we've already begun working on this year-long disability awareness program for schools, which will be spread across 3 quarterlies. So, and 6 online engagements. That's going to take a lot of my time. The biggest thing that we are doing, which is, and that gets me to volunteering, Chitra. Whenever any volunteer comes on board, or, I am invited to speak about disability awareness, I always feel that, how many workshops can I do and how many people can I reach? But I want to reach to the world. I want everybody to know about disability awareness. And that got me to thinking, how best can we create something which will answer basic questions that arise in anybody's mind about disability. So we are hoping to be able to get the funding to create a series of short films and other material, which will then go up on LMS platform. It will go up on a learning management system. So something like Ask Me kind of which will be available for everybody and anybody in the world to tap to. This is a big project, but before anybody comes on board, I have to explain to them. And as you're aware, I think differently. Trinayani thinks differently. Trinayani does things differently. So I even have to explain to them about what we do, because the first thing they ask me is, "आपके organization में कितने बच्चे हैं?" That's the first question I'm asked, because that's the traditional way people think, that you work directly with people with disabilities. And I tell them, I said, actually, there's nothing that we do at Trinayani which doesn't happen everything is along with people with disabilities. Everything. All my projects include the voice of people with disabilities, because they are experts by experience. I can simply, I will never know what it is like to live with a disability, no matter how compassionate or how passionate I am about this field. So I need to have that voice. But I do not directly work with people with disabilities. So even to explain to somebody that what we do at Trinayani at times becomes difficult. So मैंने कहा इसको create किया जाए. So those are the 3 main things that we are working on. Besides, of course, you're aware of the meetups and I mean, there are many other projects that are going on, but these are the three main things.
Really, hats off to you. I don't know how many hats you wear, but you're doing so much, and it benefits so many. So thank you so much, Ritika. I think this was absolutely fantastic. You managed to crunch in everything that you do, what you've done through your entire journey also in this podcast. Your journey as a disability advocate is truly inspiring and very commendable. All that you shared, especially for the disabled population also, but how they should feel about their own disability and express it, till everyone, all of us, the non-disabled, but the judgmental and, as you rightly put it, how each one of us is so different that we completely overlook that, and how you guided us about not being awkward around anyone with disability, to using empowering language, putting myths aside. All of it was really wonderful. Having a beautiful soul like you amongst us truly enriches our lives, makes it much more easier for our families also to interact with each other, to stay and to become so important and feel good in our community. So thank you, Ritika. I can't thank you enough. Thanks for taking out your time.
Thank you so much, Chitra. As I always say, we are all in it together. And I am absolutely delighted to be considered a part of the big family.
You were listening to the Special Needs Children podcast with Chitra Iyer, the CEO of MFA and a trustee with the Forum for Autism. If you find this podcast relevant and interesting, it will be great if you leave a review, share, like, and subscribe. You can also let us know if there is any specific topic that you would like us to cover. Feel free to email her on chitra.iyer@myfinad.com, or you can call her on 9833785892. That is 9833785892.